welcome back to Marketplace Masters, the Agency Best Practice Edition. I'm your host, Paul Sonneveld, and if you are an account manager working with an Amazon brand, vendor, or seller, today's episode is going to be right up your alley. We're going to talk about reviews, arguably one of the most influential levers for sales and conversion on Amazon. But what do you do when a client gets hit with an unfair or even a malicious review? It's going to be a great conversation, very useful today. But before we jump in, a couple of updates. First, the Amazon Vendor Summit is coming up on December 9th and 10th. It's a 2-day virtual event with over 15 speakers and 1,000 registrants. Tons of practical insights designed specifically to help vendors win in 2026. Early bird registrations are open and it's completely free for vendors and Merchant Spring clients. Just scan the QR code on your screen or head to merchantspring.io to grab your ticket. And of course, Amazon Unboxed is right around the corner. Luke and I will be heading to Nashville in early November, and we'd love to catch up with you if possible, if you're going to be there in person. Best way to get hold of me is just drop me a note on LinkedIn, and I'll find a time to connect in person. All right, well, let's get back to our topic. Today, I am joined by Shane Barker, co-founder of TraceFuse AI. Shane has been at the forefront of review compliance and has built one of the first fully terms of service compliance systems for Amazon review removal. Today's session is going to be very practical, full of actionable insights that you can take back to your clients. And of course, there's plenty of time for Q&A. So get ready with your comments and questions, and I encourage you to use the LinkedIn and LinkedIn comment section or our YouTube comment section as well. All right. After that intro, Shane, I just want to warmly welcome you to the show. It's great to have you here.
Paul, thank you so much. Been really excited about this, man. I know we saw you at Accelerate and we've been planning this, and here we are. So this is going to be an awesome session.
Fantastic. Well, let's just set the scene here, right? From an agency perspective, in your words, why are reviews and ratings so critical for client success?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about Amazon, I mean, really the reviews that go on Amazon, whether they be positive or negative reviews, that's really the lifeline of Amazon, right? Us as a consumer. When you go and you look at something, when you go look at a product review on Amazon or go look at a product on Amazon, whether you realize it or not, we all go and we gravitate to how many reviews they have, right? And what do those reviews look like? What is their star rating? So that's usually the first indicator on whether a product is something that we're going to potentially buy or not going to potentially buy. If you have a 3.1 out of a 5.0 and there's 10,000 people that sell your product, guess what? Somebody's probably not going to buy your product. In fact, what they're probably doing is doing a search looking for people at 4.0 and above, and that's who they're going to find. So, the review system and how that is and the process for all that is very, very important. And so I think, as sellers, we look at things and we go, okay, hey, we can, maybe the reviews, it's not that big of a deal, but literally it affects your sales, it affects your PPC cost, it affects your social proof, it affects so many things that it's not something that can be ignored, right? If you ignore it, the problem is it's still going to happen, right? It doesn't mean that it goes away or that it's not happening. So it's important for you to be able to go in, take a look at those reviews. And as you touched on earlier, we were actually the first company that was able to go in there and help people file cases with Amazon to be able to get those reviews removed. And so we're very, very prideful of what we've been able to build there. But what we're going to talk about today is how we can help everybody that's listening, how they can actually go and take a look at those reviews and maybe file on their own and get those removed.
We're talking about review removal, right? Which kind of assumes that it's possible to get reviews removed. So let's just try and understand that particular piece. So what type of reviews can actually be removed under Amazon's terms of service?
Yeah, great question. So really what we're looking at with, the reason why we created the company and how we put it together is we look at reviews that violate Amazon's own guidelines. So when we're looking at there is anything that maybe mentions a competitor, mentions pricing, cussing, hate speech, anything on the Amazon guidelines that you see there, those are the types of things that we look for in reviews. So you can write a legit review and you can put, great information about the product. It can be, I tried it for 3 months. I did this, I did that. Like you can be a very thorough review, but if you mention an exact price, price. Give you an example. We just had Prime Day. So if somebody says, hey, I paid $30 for this at Prime, now I see it's 45. It's a great product, but I think it's too expensive. Well, that's an issue. What I mean by that is that can be a legit review, but Amazon looks at that and they don't want you to mention pricing. As I said, don't mention a competitor. They don't want you to, do anything shipping, anything FBA related to things that we can file on as well. So the goal of this is to reevaluate, look at the Amazon's, guidelines, and then look at your reviews again through a new lens. Because I think what happens is most sellers were saying, hey, you know what? We can't get these reviews removed. Why would I even try? And so when we started the company, nobody believed we could do it. Now we have 700 brands, removed over 16,000 reviews. So we're very, very prideful of that number. But it wasn't an easy process. But the good part is that we've learned so much along the way that we have some free tools that people can use to be able to go and try this on their own. So maybe they don't have to hire us, right? Maybe they can go knock those things out and get their sales back up to where they need to be here in quarter 4.
So it's really interesting because you're essentially using Amazon's own, I guess, agreements against, to way to lock cases and get things removed. But just on the flip side, what kind of reviews can never be removed? Like, for example, because there are definitely reviews we get we don't like, right? But just because you don't like it doesn't mean you get reviewed. What are the ones you say, right? You may not like it, but don't waste your time. You're wasting your energy on this. Don't even bother because your success rate, your chances of getting it removed is 0 or less.
Yeah, I mean, really what we look at is if it doesn't violate Amazon's guidelines, the opportunity for you to get those removed are going to be very slim. Like, give you an example, maybe somebody says, hey, this is a Chinese-based product, but it's not. You're a US-based product. That doesn't necessarily violate Amazon's guidelines, right? I mean, maybe it's misinformation, but it's not a crazy violation, right? Like, what we look at are reviews that say this is an effing terrible product, effing being a cuss word. Amazon, anybody should look at that and say, hey, we shouldn't have that on the platform. To be able to get Amazon's attention to say, hey, this is actually a US-based product, not a Chinese-based product, then there needs to be some research and some certain things that go in. And we have companies that we partner with, attorneys and stuff that can go after those types of reviews. But those aren't the ones that we go after. We go after ones that clearly violate Amazon's guidelines. And in fact, our AI, when it runs through, if it is compliant with Amazon's guidelines, we don't touch those reviews. We're not even doing anything with those. We only focus on the ones that are violating Amazon's rules some way. And then obviously we look at the severity of those. If somebody wrote, this is a crappy product, some people could consider crappy to be a cuss word. I don't. That's the reason why I said it today. But, some other people could say, hey, that's something you're not supposed to use. Those ones are going to have less of a likelihood of getting removed because once again, not everybody thinks that crappy is a cuss word. Maybe some people do, some people don't. If they use the F word, I think we can all agree that shouldn't be on the platform. Those are going to be mainly the things that we start with.
Makes sense. So if you were, obviously you've got a whole solution out there, but let's say, we played in a world where that didn't exist and you worked for an agency, some medium-sized agency, and your role was to train staff in, spot non-compliant reviews. How would you train them and what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, really just get to know the Amazon's guidelines, right? I mean, that's really the core of what we do. If Amazon changes their guidelines and we change the AI, and so it's actually automatically does it because we've built the LLMs and built these models out about 3 years ago. So they're only getting better and better as time goes out. It's not, we don't use Chat GPT or anything like that. We have our own personal AI that we've built out. So yeah, I mean, if at the end of the day, what we would do is we would go and we would train them on what to visually look for, right? If you didn't have AI or anything, hey, to look at, once again, exact pricing are going to be things. It's going to be mentioning of, hey, this was not sure if it's a good product or not, but it was 2 weeks late, so I give it a 1 star. Like, that's not a product review, right? That's going to be a review of what the shipping was. And so what you want to look at are things that clearly violate Amazon's guidelines, right? And you don't need to have AI for that. You can look at, if you have 50 reviews, you can go and manually take a look at those. And if somebody mentions an exact price or mentions an exact competitor or mentions shipping or anything else that's related to Amazon's guidelines, those are all things that you can file on, right? And I think another distinction that's important, and I should have brought this up on the last question, is, not all critical reviews are bad reviews, right? So, I mean, I know they might suck a little bit, and you might look at a review and go, man, that really sucks they put that up there. But also remember that we don't get rid of reviews that are like constructive criticism or that maybe things that you could use to improve the product unless it violates Amazon's guidelines, right? So what we look at is we don't go after any and all reviews. We're going after reviews that clearly violate the guidelines. even though you might not like them, what you need to look at with those reviews and use those to be able to improve your product. So what I tell people is, because I've talked to plenty of brand new sellers that are like, oh, I'm frustrated, this, that, and the other. And it's like, hey, at the end of the day, if they give you a bad review, look at that and figure out how you can make the product better. Because I can guarantee you most companies on Amazon that sell, the products that they sold 5 years ago are going to be very different than what they sell today. They probably improve packaging, a number of different things. So just take that as a grain of salt and use it as constructive criticism to improve the product.
Yeah, some feedback is great feedback to help you build a better product, offer more value to customers and the like. Makes sense.
Exactly.
Now, let's just go back to AI. You mentioned a lot before already. You spoke about, obviously detecting and comparing against Amazon's policies and the like. But can you go in a little bit more detail in terms of how do you use AI to sort of, manage this whole process end to end? Where does it play a bigger role? Where does humans play a role? And how do you make sure it's accurate and doesn't hallucinate?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So really what we look at is the way that we started using AI was about 3 years ago. And the goal of it was originally what we were doing is we were manually looking at all reviews, right? And so that's very time consuming. As a human, you start to, especially me, I'm 50 years old. We start to, you start to get in this air of like, you start messing up things and maybe you're not 100% because you're tired, whatever it is. We have these human factors that play a role in this. And nobody wants to look at reviews for 8 hours a day. I mean, that's, you fall off cognitively, right? When you're looking at these. So what we realized was to be able to scale this, what are we going to do, right? How are we going to be able to do this without hiring, 50 or 100 people to be able to look at every single one of these reviews and then assess whether they're good or bad, and then the training and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's where we realized AI was going to be a big component. This was before, obviously, ChatGPT or anything really started to take off. So we looked at this and said, okay, how can we train these models, right, and feed them information to be able to better understand what Amazon's guidelines are? And so the way that we did this and to evaluate, to figure out, make sure there's no hallucination or anything that's untrue, what we do is we run this through our AI software. And our AI software, all it does is really just talks about whether something's compliant with Amazon's guidelines or it isn't compliant. Those are really the two things for us. So it's very simple. If you use the F word in a review, it is not compliant. If you just say something that that somebody doesn't like, those are usually compliant as long as they're not breaking the guidelines or anything fraudulent going on there. So great, what we did, and so from there, let's say we have X amount that are going to be what we call non-compliant, right? Things that violate Amazon's guidelines. Then we have humans or people or filers that will go and take a look at that and make sure that it's in violation. And then guess what? Then we're going to go ahead and create a case around that, and we're going to file manually with Amazon. So we don't use the AI to do any filings or anything like that. We always have a human in the middle. The AI is amazing. Like it's it's probably 98% of the time is correct because we've been feeding it for the last few years. I mean, it didn't start off that way, but we always have a human interaction in the middle, always, because we want to be able to evaluate that. And if we need to make any changes or things are being done wrong, most of the time my team can look at that and say, hey, that's good. Now let's develop a case around that. All we have to do is train our folks on how to file cases, where to file cases, and where what are the departments we're going to have the highest success rate. Great, my team goes in from there, and then we have the humans. I say the humans as we say the humans in AI. Then they go and they take that on from there, and then they'll go and file the cases on the client's behalf.
Right. So you're using, it sounds like what you're saying is you're using AI probably as a really good first screener, really, to sift through everything and sort of, prioritize the workload for your team. On that particular aspect, like how often do you scan listings? I mean, we're talking, thousands, if not millions of ASINs. Reviews are, some of them will receive, like multiple reviews a day. What's the frequency? I've got this vision of an engine just churning away in the background. Like, what does it look like for you?
It's very much an engine that churns in the background. So what we do is we do monitor ASINs 24 hours, 24/7, right? So that is one of the values of our services. And that was something that we learned in the beginning because people were saying, hey, this is awesome. You can clean up our listings. And we really appreciate that. But what about moving forward? We could still get attacked again, or people can still write reviews that violate Amazon's guidelines. So what we do is we actually monitor. So we actually collect reviews off of Amazon on a daily basis for all 700 of our brands. So this is a very manual process just in regards to being able to grab those reviews. And then what we do is we run those through our AI software, and then it tells us whether it's compliant or not, and then we're going to decide whether to file. So that's one of the values of the monitoring is that our goal with Trace Views, and really, with anybody we work with, is we want them to not have to worry about the reviews as much, right? And we want to take on that headache. We want to take on, hey, if a new review comes in, you don't even need to tell us. You don't need to go, hey, we just got a new 1-star today. Guess what? We already know that you got that 1-star, right? Because we're in, in the back end of our dashboard, we get a notification when new reviews come in, and then usually within a few days, we're going to be taking a look at that. A few days later, we'll be filing cases on that. So, our thing is to be very, very, we always encourage our sellers to be proactive and not reactive. We really like people that are saying, hey, I want to protect this moving forward, not oh, shoot, it's Q4, we're 2 weeks away from Christmas, and now we want to start removing reviews. Our process is slower. And what I mean by that is not that we're slow in how we do things, but expecting Amazon to respond and remove reviews, that can take a little bit of time. So we want to tell people, hey, try to start now, right? And so we can kind of get that runway to get some reviews removed, get your sales back up where they need to be for those big holidays, big Prime Day, Christmas, whatever that may be, where all the big money comes in for you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I imagine that there is a lot of urgency. A negative review comes in, I want to get it removed. Obviously, detecting it, I'm sure a lot of your clients will ask you, can you detect in real time? And I'm sure the answer is, well, we can check it a couple of times a day. But the real delay here is probably the time it takes to get the review removed if you are successful. So I'm sure it's distribution of timings here, but what is the most common time to get a review removed? Let's assume the request to remove it is legitimate. There is a breach of Amazon's policies.
Mm-hmm.
How long typically does it take to get a review removed?
Yeah, so historically we've seen, sometimes within 24 hours. Now that's not the typical, right? That doesn't, you're not going to see reviews removed. We have seen that happen. We've also seen it where it takes a month and a half or 2 months, right? So the thing is, it is not a fast process, and it's not because we're not filing cases. It really comes down to Amazon and how quickly they're going to either respond to that or close that case down, and we have to file another case. So it just depends on who we get in contact with at Amazon, and they review that. And if they're going to remove that review or not, sometimes a high percentage of the time they'll close that case, as we know, and then we're going to be filing another case. And we feel very confident about filing multiple cases because these are reviews that clearly violate Amazon's own rules, right? We're not asking for a special favor. We're saying, hey, here goes the F word. You guys are not supposed to say that. Hey, let's get this review removed. So Amazon responds, but it's not a fast response. It takes a little bit more time there.
Yeah. And in terms of, so let's just go back to the human aspect of it, right? The logging of cases, trying to get things removed. At one level, yes, you log a case and you hope for the best, right? But have you worked out, like, what are some of the best practices that you use when it comes to case management? And really, because we've all been there, right? Log a case and Amazon gives you some waffly answer and they say, no, oh, you haven't responded, the case is closed. And you end up reopening, resubmit, reopen, resubmit. Obviously, that's not a great place to be, particularly if it's your business to do this, right? So I'm sure you've worked out kind of more disciplined, best practice ways of logging cases, supporting evidence, and all of that. Tell me, what does that look like? What is the most effective way really to challenge reviews, through that case management system?
Yeah. So first and foremost, what I would say, and we kind of touched on this earlier, but we have an Amazon review checker at traceviews.ai. So we'll include something in the show notes too. But what you can do is go to traceviews.ai. There's a tool up there. It's an Amazon review checker. So they can use that for free. So that's what I would recommend first is going in, you put in an ASIN, you can go and you have to verify your email address, and then you'll actually get a report. And that report is actually the same AI that we use. And it'll tell you, hey, in the last, month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, these are going to be the reviews. And these are why they're in violation against Amazon's guidelines. So I would start there, right? Because you want to be able to take a look at that. And then what you want to do is you want to build a case. And when you're building a case, try to take you need to take the emotion out of it, right? Like it sucks. It sucks if somebody's, I always say attacking your baby because somebody's writing a review. You feel like, it's a competitor, this, but you got to build a case, right? If you say, hey, Amazon, I need you to go look into this and let me know by tomorrow. Amazon's not going to do that for the most part, right? They have a million other things to worry about. What you need to do is you need to bring the smoking gun. You need to bring the information, the reason why it's in violation. You don't want to leave any guesswork up to them or them to need to be able to go do any research. You want them to be able to click on a link. You want to be able to explain why it's in violation. You want to be able to put which ones are in violation. You want to give them as much information as possible. It doesn't need to be 18 paragraphs or 80 pages. Like the idea of this short, sweet, and to the point, right? You want to be able to assume you're doing a pitch to Amazon and you have 30 seconds. Just base it off of that, use bullet points, explain why it's in violation, take the emotion out of it. Don't ask for Amazon to do tons of work because they won't. They're very, very busy. You have to realize how many people are filing cases on everything on Amazon, millions a day probably, right? Maybe not all in reviews, but there's a lot of work. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that are trying to obviously keep the machine going. Assume they don't have a lot of time. Assume you have 30 to 45 seconds. Take the emotion out of it. Use our reports because that will tell you what's in violation. And then obviously we have a PDF too that they can use as well, that they can figure out where to file and what different departments where they could be filing these cases with. That will be helpful as well, because if you file with the wrong department, then guess what? There could be an issue there because they're not going to respond to you.
I always wonder whether they're Amazon, I'm sure they have, right? They have AI on their side of the fence too. So
They do.
then,
Yeah,
then the
absolutely.
question becomes, how do you write your case so the AI model puts it in the right bucket?
You're
Um,
you're
so
ahead of your time, my friend. You're ahead of your time. Yes, that's absolutely it. There's definitely AI. You're not always, dealing with somebody, Now, I have talked to Amazon, and they did say that when you click the report button, they did say that somebody does see that, a human actually does see that. I'm not on Amazon's side. I do believe if Amazon says this is what they do, then this is what they do. And our thing is we're kind of the backup to Amazon. If Amazon, they're saying they remove something like or stop 270 million reviews, or some crazy number. Obviously our thing is if they get through, then we just want to help Amazon. We're like that second layer of protection of saying, hey, this one slipped through the cracks. Hey, let's get these removed. And once again, usually it's that process is a little nuanced, but once we get reviews removed, trust me, clients are pretty happy about that.
yeah. So you work with a lot of brands, right? I think you mentioned something like, a couple of hundred, 700
Yeah.
brands or
Yeah.
so. At some point, these brands would have tried to do this themselves, right? And they've come to you. But I guess, make it less about you and your solution, but, life before trace views. What were the most common mistakes that those brands or those agencies were making with dealing with negative reviews? So not so much why do they come to you, but what are the biggest things, the mistakes people just make when it comes to this whole process, things that should avoid?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things is not filing with the right department, right? And that sometimes can be a moving target because Amazon, will change policies and do things. And so, filing with the wrong department, right, and not knowing where to file. Also, putting emotion in the things, assuming that Amazon is going to work, Amazon's there to work for you. They're really not. When it comes to being a seller, those are the main things that we take a look at. Like if you're looking at this and you want to file a case and you want to be successful. The other thing is don't bombard Amazon, right? What I mean by that is you file the case today, you don't need to ask for an update the next day, right? Like give you an example for like brand registry. I believe their internal timeline is about 10 days. They have to respond within 10 days. So when we do things, we give them those 10 days to respond, right? So we're not going to ask for an update every day. We're not going to say, hey, Amazon, what's going on? Amazon's busy. Amazon's going to respond or they're not going to respond, and then we'll file another case. So don't bombard them. You don't want to get, we know people in the past that have gotten blacklisted because you get put on the naughty list because you want an update and you're asking Amazon every hour, what's going on? What are you guys doing? Saying bad things. You don't want to do that. You got to give Amazon the appropriate amount of time. And that's what we do on our side. And that's why the process can take a little bit longer, right? That's why we're not removing reviews within 24 hours all the time, is because we have to get somebody at Amazon to be able to see that, obviously care about the situation, be able to go and do what they're going to do, or they close the case and once again we'll file another case. But once again, try to take the emotion out of it and don't bombard them. Do not, because you don't want to get in a situation that they just start ignoring all of your cases, because that's going to suck for a number of different reasons, obviously.
Don't get blacklisted on the Amazon
Ever.
side.
That's not recommended ever.
Now, in your answer here, you spoke about brand registry and some other tools, which sort of prompted me to ask you, from an agency point of view, review removal is one aspect, but what's your recommendation on how agencies should balance like review removal with like the broader reputation management for their clients and their brands?
Yeah. So I mean, I think, the thing is reputation management, no matter what it is going to obviously involve reviews, right? You're going to need to be able to assess more positive reviews, more 4s and 5 stars, and critical reviews 1, 2s, and 3s. So having an evaluation of that and understanding where you guys are at, the reviews are going to make it so that affects your BSR, that affects your star ratings, right? So that's what you got to take a look at when you go, I can guarantee you that, hey, when you start removing critical reviews, you start adding 4s and 5 stars, you're going to see more sales come in, right? Now, I don't know exactly what depends on category and competition and different things, but the idea of this is that by doing this, you're absolutely going in, you're taking control of your reviews. You're going to be able to go in and get some filed and get some reviews removed. And then also looking at your 4s and 5 stars, right? The goal of that is for us to take that on, right? So you don't have to worry about that stuff, that headache, or you can have a team internally and still use our tool to be able to look at ASINs and be able to use the PDF that we've created so that you can go and do it on their own. The goal is just not to ignore it, right? You want to make sure that, because it's still good, it's going to happen, right? And you want to make sure you're being proactive about that, because you don't want it to be a situation that you've gotten so many bad reviews and then all of a sudden a week later you look at it and then all of a sudden your sales are tanked and now you've got this uphill battle that you've got to go and try to win, get as many reviews removed as possible. And then that timeline usually is a little small, and the amount of success you can have in a small amount of time is going to be very limited.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. The I'm just looking at, I literally just looked at my diary here, and we're the 29th of October, right? We are very close to November, which means we're very close to 2026, which gets us to look at the future, right? I mean, you've been in this business for a while, and you can see the trajectory, right? How have you seen Amazon really evolve its review policies? And if you're sort of projecting into the future, 2006, 7, 27, 28, like, how do you see Amazon evolving its review policies? And specifically, what should agencies prepare for?
Yeah. So, obviously the future is going to be pretty interesting, obviously, with AI, using infusion of AI tools with, Rufus and everything else, not only just on Amazon, but everywhere. I think the thing we need to look at is, with the reviews and what Amazon's going to be doing. Amazon obviously has things going with the FTC, and they just did a thing with the BBB to be able to go and stop people from writing fake reviews, which I think is obviously a step in the right direction. They're obviously beefing up the protection of those reviews not even coming through, which I think is going to be very big. As I said, I think they'd mentioned about 270 million. I'll have to verify that, but it was a lot that they had stopped before they even came to the door, before they'd even come through and made that happen. So I think they'll continue to beef that up. The thing at the end of the day is that reviews will always be a situation everywhere, right? I mean, there's going to be fake reviews. There's going to be people that attack you. We can build all the tech in the world, but it's never going to be 100%, right? And same thing like with SEO. Everybody, the minute you figure out SEO, somebody's going to figure out a way to try to game the system. It's the same thing with Amazon, Walmart, whatever. There's always going to be somebody that is going to understand the system, then figure out some way to game it. And reviews are going to be a big part of that because that affects your sales. So I think Amazon's going to do whatever they can and will continuously, go in there and being proactive and knocking down those reviews, but they'll never be 100%. They just won't. And it's not because Amazon doesn't care. It's because you can't get to 100%, right? There's always going to be a new way. There's always going to be a new system, new things that people are doing. There's going to be black hat tactics. You can it's like they're like cockroaches, which is a terrible. Hopefully, if anybody's listening to this, please don't spam my site or anything. But they're like cockroaches. It's like you kill these 5, there's going to be 10 other ones that come out because of that. And that's not Amazon's fault. Amazon's doing everything they can, as much as I think Walmart is, and as much as Google is, and Yelp, and all these other platforms. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be a need for a service like ours because there's always going to be some that slip through the cracks, right? And if Amazon, once again, a lot of people aren't going to know how to do this and file cases and all that kind of stuff. Our point is to educate people so they can go and do that. And so when this does happen, and they also can be educated on new tactics and the way people are spamming and doing all these different types of things. We've got some other features. We won't talk about it today, but some other interesting stuff that we're going to be adding to be able to help with more of that stuff, where you're getting attacked or people are infringing upon your buy box and some other things. So we got some new features that'll be fun. But for now, just get in, learn how to file cases, use all of our tools that are free right now. Well, they'll actually continue to be free. We're never going to make them not free. Go in and educate yourself, figure out how you're doing it, and then hopefully you can start moving some reviews so you don't have to give me any money. I mean, that's a huge bonus,
Do yourself out of business.
I'm trying.
Everyone's happy.
Yeah.
All right. We've gone past the half an hour mark, so we do have to wrap up, unfortunately. It's been an absolute pleasure. Shane, thank you so much for bringing such clarity to what is often a very murky part of the Amazon account management process. I think our audience of agency professionals, account managers will really walk away with a much sharper toolkit for protecting their clients from the damage of unfair reviews. So yeah, thank you so much. I'll always ask at this point for anyone who wants to just get hold of you, maybe learn a little bit more about what you do, or you mentioned some free tools as well. What's the best way to get hold of those or get hold of you?
Yeah. Absolutely. So you can go to tracefuse.ai. That's TRACEFUSE.ai. You go right up to the top of the website, and what you'll have up there, it'll say an Amazon review checker. That's our free tool. You can go and you click on that. You put in whatever ASIN you want. We'll do an evaluation. Usually takes a few minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how many reviews you have. And then you verify your email address, and we'll send over that report. And then if you guys want, we also have on most of our blog posts at the bottom, it'll say, hey, do you want a PDF on how to do this on your own? Absolutely, you can go and grab that, and then you can go, you can start filing on your own. Good things will happen there. If you have any questions, you can reach out at any time. My email is going to be very complicated. It's shane@tracefuse.ai. I know that's a lot to take in. SHANE.
Yeah.
That is exactly it, Paul. You're a gentleman and a scholar. So great. We've got that up there. You guys can reach out to me at any time if you have any questions. And then you guys can also follow me on LinkedIn. We've got a pretty aggressive LinkedIn following, and we do about 300,000, almost 1 million impressions a month off of my posts. So I'm very proud of that, and got an amazing audience over there. So you guys go follow me over there. We like to, update people on new things that are happening on Amazon. We got a cool little newsletter, all the fun stuff. No different than you guys, not quite as big as you guys, because you guys are savages and beautiful, good old Merchant Spring. But anyways, yeah, we're trying to catch up,
Awesome. Shane, it was great to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. For those of you who join us live, thanks so much for your participation. Remember, the full recording will be sent to all registrants, so you can rewatch and share this with your team. Now, if you're looking for more agency-focused insights, stay tuned for our next agency best practices session here on Marketplace Masters next week. I'm Paul Sonneveld. Thanks again for being with us, and we'll see you next week. Take care.